Due to the overwhelming response we have had as a result of our published articles concerning frauds in Costa Rica, and the number of inquiries that those articles have generated, Cody L. Gear and Associates presents Scams in Costa Rica Part 1. This is the first in a series of PowerPoint presentations designed to assist you in making informed decisions prior to entering into a contract to purchase property in Costa Rica. This presentation should not be construed to be legal advice, but rather as educational and informational. If you were to have available to you all of the information and facts concerning the purchase of property in Costa Rica prior to signing a purchase and sales agreement, and were able to compare that with the representations that are made in the offer to purchase, you could quickly conclude whether or not you have been the victim of a civil tort known as a fraud in the inducement. What exactly is a fraud in the inducement? After spending 4 years in law school, the answer to this question could take an inordinate amount of time to explain in detail and is outside the scope of this presentation. This presentation is an overview of the elements necessary to prove a fraud in the inducement. It is by no means an exhaustive analysis of the many legal applications it has, such as grounds to break a contract. The purpose of this presentation is to provide you with sufficient information to be aware of the pitfalls and thus hopefully avoiding losing your money. Although the laws of Costa Rica differ markedly from those of the United States, both countries have laws that make it illegal to deliberately mislead consumers. Briefly, and according to the United States Federal Court for the Middle District of Florida, a fraud in the inducement has 4 elements. First, a false statement of material fact. Secondly, that when this false statement was made, it was made knowingly or should have been known that it was false. Thirdly, that the false statement was made to induce the victim to enter into a contract. And finally, that such false statement of material fact proximately caused injury to the victim when acting in reliance on the misrepresentation. How many times have we heard that old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, then it's too good to be true? Prior to examining the elements of a fraud in the inducement, consider that there is nothing wrong about looking for and trying to locate the best value for your dollar. There is nothing wrong about developers and real estate agents advertising what they have to sell. Many such promotions and advertising is commonly known as sales puffery. Sales puffery is information supplied by the seller to the public as a means to embellish or otherwise demonstrate that his property or product is better than that of his competitor. However, when the sales puffery is a deliberate lie and is made with the intent and purpose to deceive the victim to enter into a contract, then it becomes a material misrepresentation. Now let us examine each element of a fraud in the inducement as it was defined earlier. Element number 1. The first element, a false statement of material fact. How do you determine what constitutes the difference between sales puffery and a material misrepresentation? As I mentioned earlier, it is a common sales practice to use sales puffery to promote or advertise a product or property. Such terms as own your own piece of paradise, or for little or no money you can buy the property of your dreams, are clearly terms of sales puffery. However, when you are shown a piece of property that is beachfront and told this is the type of property that you can own, and subsequently find out that the property you bargained for is 1.5 miles from the beach, then obviously you've been lied to. Most sellers of property will provide you with a written perspective of the property offered. Within that document, representations are made concerning the property being sold, and the most buyers enter into these agreements prior to seeking the advice of a lawyer. A lawyer would quickly point out the difference between sales puffery and a deliberate false statement. Remember, if sales puffery is sufficiently misstated, it can constitute a false statement. Element 2. It's important to understand that when such a representation is made to the buyer, and the seller at the time the representation was made knew or should have known that their representation was false, this fulfills the second element of a fraud in the inducement. But how do we prove that? If facts discovered during the course of the negotiation would lead a reasonable person, when considering all the facts in their totality, to reach the conclusion that anyone making such a statement would have to know or reasonably be aware of the falsity of the statement, then it is a false statement. Most people want to believe what others tell them is true, especially those which serve in a fiduciary capacity. But the truth is oftentimes obscured from our view through different deceptive methods. Element 3. The third element necessary to prove a fraud in the inducement is that the false statement was made to induce the buyer into entering into a contract. The determining factor follows establishment of a false statement made with the intent of having the buyer enter into a contract relying on the information contained in the false statement. Finally, the fourth element relates to damages the buyer suffered as a result of reliance on the misrepresentation. Unfortunately, this can only be assessed and evaluated after the loss. There are two parts to the loss. First has to do with the actual damages and is self-explanatory. The second has to do with proximate cause, which really means nothing more than the legal theory that but for the reliance on the misrepresentation, the fraud or loss would not have occurred. With more than 20 years of law enforcement experience, being a board-certified fraud examiner and having a law degree, I strongly recommend that if you are thinking about purchasing property in Costa Rica, you invest in a complete and thorough due diligence prior to making any commitment. Finding firms in Costa Rica with the requisite experience and education to conduct such a due diligence can be problematical. We here at Cody L. Gear & Associates are board-certified fraud examiners and are partnered with Consultores Iberoamericano de Derechos, commonly referred to as CID. CID is a licensed Costa Rican law firm with English-speaking attorneys. Combined, we present a formidable, investigative, and research group by which you can accomplish your due diligence prior to executing a contract or purchasing property in Costa Rica. No other investigators in Costa Rica have the experience and educational credentials that match or exceed ours. The time and money you invest in a thorough due diligence prior to executing a contract in Costa Rica will be pale in comparison to the potential loss you can suffer if you don't. As with all decisions regarding the selection of an attorney or investigator, consideration should be given to the experience, education, and number of years they have in the field of expertise. Also, remember, you're not in Kansas anymore, Dorothy. You are a foreign national buying property in Costa Rica, and as such are subject to the laws of Costa Rica, which are markedly different than the laws in the United States. The Costa Rican court system is slow and cumbersome and rife with corruption. The purpose of this presentation is to make you aware of the scams and better informed prior to making a financial decision to purchase property in Costa Rica. It is not intended as legal advice and is to be used only as educational and informational. Remember, a penny's worth of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Cody L. Gear & Associates, in concert with CID, the Costa Rican law firm, have the expertise and experience to provide you with the prevention necessary in order to avoid being scammed in Costa Rica. For a free consultation, call us toll-free today at 321-218-9209 or visit our website at www.codylgearandassociates.com.